So my life didn't have any structure. There was a very chaotic environment. You get in the military, everything's very structured, very organized. When they put you in boot camp, they literally break you down. So you're in there for 3 months and everything that you've known, any habits that you had before, that's basically taken from you. They taught you, how to fold your sheets, do your laundry, march, all those things, respect for one another, and you rewarded for things. I've made this connection before, but I was really good at video games. So I treated it like a video game. I did that in boot camp and I became like a platoon leader and I started to get rewarded. So I was like, cool. So if I just do good things happen.
Imagine having direct access to someone who's navigated life's toughest terrains and come out stronger. Someone who's been there, done that, and can guide you with empathy, experience, and honesty. This isn't just advice. It's a lifeline, a strategy session, a chance to learn from my journey so you can accelerate yours. Without the ability to be self-aware and introspective, the ability for you to get to where you want to go, nearly impossible.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the David Guttman podcast. I've got a really, really interesting guest. I'm really excited to talk to you about some of the stuff he's working on. Douglas James, ex-Navy, ex-military, right?
Yep.
Serial entrepreneur. You got at least, I'm not even sure how many businesses you got going, but we'll get into that some. But thanks for coming on.
Absolutely, Dave. Great to be in Miami, and I'm glad our friend was able to connect us. This is a really nice studio you have here as well. So,
and I appreciate that.
Yeah.
So, if you don't mind, just maybe going a little back into the Wayback Machine. Sort of, growing up, siblings. What did your folks do? Kind of what sort of, if kind of put you on this entrepreneurial journey?
Yeah, man. So I grew up in New Orleans, Louisiana. Nothing too fancy. My mom working class parents, blue collar. My mom worked nights in the hospital, 12 hours a night. She's still, working part-time now, but she was the breadwinner for our family. So she was a respiratory therapist. My dad, on the other hand, he was an auto mechanic, kind of did like trade jobs, kind of like, didn't really have like a really big high paying career or anything. And, growing up, man, I had a kind of like a troubled childhood, so, it necessarily wasn't conducive to an entrepreneurship type of environment, right? Both my parents worked. My dad dabbled in, substance abuse, alcohol, drugs. There was, some physical, verbal stuff going on as well. So it wasn't, the best environment for a kid. But through that journey, it's really taught me like to be, to learn to become the man that like I need to be and learn from, that childhood. So I have 2 daughters and a wife today. And I'm actually really thankful because if I did have like a perfect childhood, I don't know if I'd be able to build what I've built today, right? Because I think a lot of amazing entrepreneurs that I've met, they've come out of some type of struggle, right? And that just makes sense because diamonds, it takes like 50,000 pounds of pressure to make a diamond, right? So I've had to endure a lot, going through my childhood and see my parents struggle. There was bankruptcies, a lot of things that I had to see, and there was actually a time where we didn't know if we were going to eat. There was times where we would go to sleep, we didn't know if we were going to eat, and just really thankful for my mom and kind of what she did to kind of just keep food on the table. But a lot of people that I meet today, there's always that story of back, rags to riches, where they came from. And I'm just very thankful that, we've come out of this. I have another sister as well, and she's in the medical field. She's doing really well. But, growing up, there was no one around me really was a business owner. The only person I could think of that was close that I kind of got some inspiration from was my uncle. He's somebody that, was always really high up in the pharmaceutical chain, running sales teams for like Roche Pharmaceutical and a number of companies. So again, that was a job, but he did what, a lot of great entrepreneurs do is they take their money and, and they invest it into assets like real estate, right? So he's somebody that was always, I seen him as wealthy, as someone that was, shaking things up. So, but yeah, that's a little bit about my background. And
did you play any sports? Did you have any coaches or teachers maybe that, sort of were inspirational to you?
Yeah. I had, up until I was about 18, 19 years old, that's when I joined the military. So before that, it was me just being a kid, just doing dumb things, so if I can contribute like one person that I actually have never really given this person credit, like I think on any podcast or any speaking, which is interesting, but no one's ever asked me that question, is my guidance counselor. And when I was like 13 or 14 years old.
Actually, one decent guidance counselor in the world. Yeah. How about that?
So his name is Mr. Moore, and I don't know where he's at, but if you see this Mr. Moore, like, thank you. But he's somebody, I was in his office like almost every morning when I was 15, 16, 17 years old and going through school, because around that time I started to become like my own man, and I started to see the behavior that my dad was doing, right? And there's a lot of things that he was doing that any kid should never see, right? But he's somebody that kind of, walked me through this behavior and helped me understand and kind of understand my emotions and the feelings I was feeling. And that helped me get like a grip. And I ended up moving out of my parents' house, I think when I was 16, moved in with my best friend's parents. And I lived there for 3 months, moved in with my grandparents, and then started bartending. And
at 16,
at 17.
Okay.
Yeah. I was elite. So it's an Italian restaurant.
Good fake ID.
Actually, no, I've always been tall. I've always looked, I guess, more mature. So there's like this small town restaurant in New Orleans called Semolina's. It's like an Italian restaurant. It was a mom and pop. It was owned by a couple, and they were just kind of hiring people. They're like, hey, do you know how to make drinks? I'm like, I know how to drink drinks. So yeah, they gave me the cookbook, so to speak, for all the drinks. And I just started bartending illegally. Right. And there was a lot of things that they did in that restaurant. And they ended up closing down after about a year and a half. And then I ended up, joining the Navy. But that was an interesting experience.
Let's start with that pivot though. So you decided to move out at 16. Was there an event that happened that caused that for you to move out and move in with your friends, folks?
Very specific event. Around that time, like I said, I started coming to my own as a young adult, a young guy, and I really started to see what's right, understand like what's right from wrong, right? Like you're not supposed to, beat your kids, beat your wife. You're not supposed to, abuse alcohol, abuse drugs, run around with strippers, a whole bunch of things, and, just to give my dad credit, he's older now, wiser. I love him. I don't necessarily have a close relationship with him. I've kind of already make amends with that, but it is a part of my story. I'm actually not afraid to talk about it, and, some of my family might get I have gotten backlash, like from some families, just like, it's part of my story. I feel like everyone has the things that they came from, that struggles, right? And it's all part of me. I'm my most genuine self because I share that story, and that's part of my past. So anyway, very specific event. My dad came home, was drunk, and I approached him. I'm like, Dad, like WTF, like this is not okay. I'm done like supporting this behavior. I'm not going to drive around with you anymore while you're drinking, robbing people, whatever you're doing. Because that was kind of what we did. Me and my sister would ride around in New Orleans in his truck, and he would conduct all this crazy criminal behavior. And we were just kids. And then if you're a kid, like I have 2 daughters, if you're a kid, your kids look up to you, and anything you do is like, that's the way it's supposed to be. Right. So I felt like my dad was the king. Like, so whatever he did was out of integrity, was the right thing to do. But when I started to turn 14, 15, 16, you started coming in your own. And I confronted him. I said, I don't agree with anything you do, and I don't support this, and you can't treat my mom like this, and you need to get your stuff together, right? Or I'm going to leave. That's basically what I told him. And we got into a confrontation. He threw a punch, and I left. And that's it, and I moved in with my best friend's parents, stayed them for 3 months. They were like second parents to me, moved in with my grandparents, and I stayed there for maybe a year or two until I joined the Navy when I was 19 years old.
Well, give you a lot of credit for being authentic. I mean, I remember I helped my mom detox from alcohol when I was 9, which is why I never drank till I was 35. But like you said, it's part of your story, it's part of your journey, and it's you don't get to pick your parents. Well, so the your grandparents that you moved in, was it your dad's parents or your mom's parents?
It was my dad's parents.
Dad's parents. Well, that's interesting. How were they about? How did they feel about the kind of dad that he'd been? I mean, is their son?
Man, Granny, I love you. This is part of my story. If you watch this, just I love you. I love all Paul, everyone. It's just shit, man. I'm trying to keep back some tears. So
I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's just like my family, you know, man. I don't talk about it too much. I usually keep track on business, but I want to share it because it's a huge part of, I think, of the man I am today. So that's why I'm good with sharing it. But, yeah, I mean, so like my grandparents who I love dearly, which are my dad's parents, my mom's parents, unfortunately, my grandma passed away at, I think 55 in that age. I was really young. I was a kid. I was like 4 or 5 years old. She passed from cancer. And then my grandfather, my mom's dad, passed just a few years ago, and he lived till I think 85-ish. Okay. So he lived a very long life. But both my dad's parents are still around, and they were young. So when they had my dad, they were like not even 20 yet. They were 16 and 17, 18, right? So
they were still pretty young, your grandparents.
Oh yeah, my grandparents are basically the age of like normal, like the average parent, really, right? And I have young parents. I think my mom's 64 and my dad's 60. Anyway, you were the original question you were asking about.
I just wanted to know how your dad's parents were about how they were young parents.
So
how that turned out.
Yeah, I was working to that. So they have 3 kids, 3 boys, which I love. One's my dad, obviously. My other 2 uncles. One uncle has cerebral palsy. He's been crippled. He can't walk since I think he was about 5 or 6 years old. And he still lives with them, so they care for him. And then my other uncle, who's very successful, is in a relationship and is also how do I say, he's gay.
Okay.
So they all 3 though have like their own interesting, challenges, as we all do. And they've been very, I think that there's things early on with my grandparents that they didn't necessarily, they wanted to just accept it for what it is, and they didn't want to maybe seek additional help. Right. You know what I'm saying? Like they knew my dad, for example, they knew my dad was, had issues early on. I think they brought him to, a clinic and got him checked out, and they're like, hey, your son's demonstrating these behaviors. These are conducive with like schizophrenia. Right. And I think they were maybe not necessarily accepting of that either way. So I think my dad didn't undergo proper treatment at an early time, but he continued to grow as an adult, and that festered into, the man he became eventually. Right.
I mean, to your grandparents, credit too, they had a special needs kid, and they were kids themselves. Right. So it's really hard to be the kind of parent you need to be under those circumstances. It's funny. I have an uncle that's gay too. And I remember when I went to college, my dad's like, oh, by the way, Uncle John just came out. I'm like, Dad, he got me a sweater vest when I was 10 for my birthday. I knew he was gay since then. Like, no one gets a 10-year-old a sweater vest. Come on.
Yeah.
So, but so now you make the decision. You're going to go into the military. And what was the main driver? Did you have a friend or someone else that had gone into the military? Was it, you watched Top Gun? Like, what was it that got you to, to say, hey, I think I want to go into the military?
So here's the thing. I was bartending. I was drinking. I was staying out till 4 or 5 a.m. in New Orleans.
Nothing good happened at 4 a.m. in New Orleans.
At 18 years old, nothing's great happened to me after midnight, and I'm still awake, right? So I was living with my grandparents, and it basically got to the point where like I graduated high school, I was drinking and staying out to 4 a.m. for like a year. My grandparents, my mom came to me like, look, you're going to go to college, you're going to go to the military, you're going to get the F out of my house,
right?
Basically. And I graduated high school with like a 1.4 GPA. And the only reason why I basically had a D and graduated is because I cheated off the smart kids. Like I was not a great student. I didn't want to be there. not good, you know, taking instructions and kind of all that. Hence why I'm in business for myself. And then I didn't want to, you know, have my family disown me. So I was like, well, I guess I'm going to the military, you know. And my grandma was like, hey, you have a great grandpa that was on the, you know, USS Arizona, you know, that actually went down to Pearl Harbor, you know.
Oh, wow.
So there's some family stuff there. I'm like, hey, the Navy sounds cool. Maybe I can do that. You know, we have family, you know, in the Navy in the past. So I ended up joining the Navy. So, but I joined the Navy as an information system technician in IT. Okay. Because I was really into computers, right? I loved computers. I used to watch tech TV, video games. I would build computers, take them apart, put them back together, upgrade them, kind of do all that. I was always the kid that would take apart like all the cars and toys and kind of rebuild them, like an engineer, right? And so I end up joining as an IT. So I get to boot camp, and I'm in boot camp. And for anyone that's been in the military that's went to boot camp, you know that there's like this moment of truth on like day 7 or 8 or 9 of boot camp. And they're like, hey, they put you in a room, and it's usually this big, like, you know, buff looking chief or somebody that looks pretty scary if you're just a kid, right? And he's like, look, if you've ever, you know, smoked weed, you ever did drugs, cocaine, if you've ever, you know, got pulled over or arrested, we're going to find out. You tell us right now. Right. So I actually had a history. And before I joined the military, when I was 17, I was working at Target for a short period of time between bartending. And I ended up shoplifting, like, I don't know, $4,000 in electronics. I was an electronics systems technician, so I had access to the keys and all the security and stuff. And I'm shoplifting and got caught. I was walking out with, you know, what I would do. I'm just going to give away the technique, but you know, when you go buy something, they all have magnets on it, right? So they got to demagnetize it. I don't even know if they do that today, but that's how it was back then. They would have a magnet so that when you walk past the magnet detectors at the front door, it would beep, right? Some stores still have that. So whenever somebody would buy like a, you know, 40, 50 inch TV or something, I would just have the stuff I want to steal in a bag next to it. And I would take it and demagnetize and ring it up as the customer's buying it. And then I would take it off the order, but it's demagnetized now, and I didn't remagnetize it. So whenever people bought TVs, I had to walk them to their car. So I just put my stuff in their cart, walked them to the car, and then put the TV in and put my stuff. So anyway, I was doing that one day, and I got right outside the door, and I heard someone say Douglas behind me. And I was like, that's it. Somebody got me, you know? So it was like the assets protection from Target, you know, shout out to the assets protection. But yeah, man, they, you know, I got arrested. It was misdemeanor. Turns out they had people stealing a lot of stuff. They're like, you recognize any of these items? I'm like, no, this is what I did. This is how I did it. So they put me in like a first offenders program. Had to do like a class every month, pay a fee every month, stuff like that. I was 17 years old, did dumb stuff. And again, I don't want to blame my dad for that. I made that decision, but again, that festered. And I feel like that kind of festered that behavior because there were still tendencies and things that I saw that I thought was okay back then, but I still like wasn't connecting the dots yet. You know, wasn't my own man yet.
So now you're in the room with the meathead guy going over your past, and you're sharing this with him, right? So what happens? Do they kick you out for that? Because they obviously didn't kick you out. You stayed in the military for 10 years, right?
When I joined the Navy, my recruiter was like, "Hey, my recruiter, right? He's like, hey man, we're gonna get this expunged, taken off your record, so you can join the military." So I'm like, cool. So he's like, but if anyone ever asked you, don't bring it up because it never happened. Okay. So I'm like, all right, it's cool. So I get into boot camp. Moment of truth comes, and I'm like, you know what? My recruiter told me this is expunged. It's all good. I'm just gonna like mention it. It's not even on my record, right? My recruiter told me it's not on my record. So I go into the room, and for IT, the reason why that was important because to be in IT, you need a secret security clearance. Okay. Because you see, you know, Google and computer stuff that you're not supposed to, you know, you're not share, and so we go in the room, and there's this guy, you know, he opens the file. And the first question he asks, have you ever been arrested? I'm like, dang, can we not work up to it? Like, it's the first question.
Buy me a drink first.
Yeah, right? Or just ask me like where I live or what my social security number is or something first. And And I'm like, yeah, I was arrested when I was 17, but my recruiter got it expunged. It's all good. And then, dude, he just closes the file and he's like, I'm sorry, you're going to have to pick a different rate or a different job.
Right.
You don't qualify for IT. And I was destroyed because I was a computer guy. Like I said, I love computers. I would watch tech TV till 2 a.m. in the morning, super big into video games, computers, all this stuff. And I call two people. I call my mom, I call my grandma. My mom, my grandma said, come home, just come back home. You can leave. And they actually gave you the option to leave or pick a new job. My grandma said, come home. So I toughed it out for like a few hours. And I called my mom, and then my mom was like, baby, I support you. Hey, everyone in my family is in the medical field. I'm a respiratory therapist. You have 3 doctors who are your uncles and aunts, a pharmacist. Why don't you just do medical? And I was like, okay. So I was like, I'm already there. What am I going to do? I'm this 19-year-old kid. Life back home is what's for me. My family's there, but what other opportunities is there? This is the best opportunity. So I ended up choosing to be a corpsman. So I went into the Navy as a corpsman, and and it was great. Saw and did amazing, beautiful things. So.
And now you're in the military, and having watched some of your content, you progress super fast. I think things you'd said that would normally take, 10 or 15 years, you did in 5 in terms of some of the getting elevated and stuff like that. Maybe talk about that. Because, it's interesting in the military, everything is prescribed for you. This is when you eat, this is when you do everything, right?
This is when you shit.
Yeah, exactly. And as an entrepreneur, nothing could, it's exactly the opposite.
Yeah.
So it's interesting that you've been successful in both of those ways. You've been successful when things were super prescribed for, down to the minute. And then you've also been successful when things are completely free form. Maybe talk a little bit about what that was like and how you made that pivot.
Yeah, it's good. It's a good question. Cause, so my life didn't have any structure at all. My family life growing up, right? There was a very chaotic environment, abuse, yelling, all the stuff, moving houses, jobs, going to jail. Like it was super chaotic, no structure, no organization. So you get in the military, everything's very structured, very organized. And when they put you in boot camp, they literally break you down. So you're in there for 3 months, and everything that you've known, any habits that you had before, if you had a phone, if you had a girlfriend, if you had anything, that's basically taken from you, right? Yes, if you have a girlfriend, wife, family, they're always going to be there. But when you're in boot camp, you can't call them whenever you want.
Right.
So they taught you, how to fold your sheets, do your laundry, march, all those things, respect for one another. How to be in integrity, right? And you rewarded for things, right? So, I'm making this connection. I've made this connection before, but you heard me say video games and computers, right? I was really good at video games. Like I knew how to beat basically any game I played. I could play the hardest possible mode and beat the game. Like I can beat the boss at the highest difficulty. Right. Because you can play, easy, medium, or insane. Sometimes there's like an insane version. I would play that and I would beat the game. So I treated it like a video game. Right. It's okay. It's like, okay, I just got to fold my socks this way, make my bed this way, march this certain way, eat and, do what I'm told here. And just like in video games, if you win, you get rewards, you get points, and then you can cash in the points for other things. So I did that in boot camp. Right. And I became like a platoon leader, right? And I started to get rewarded. And then I, became like the whole company leader, so I was in charge of my whole boot camp class, which of like 60 kids. Right. And when I graduated, I was basically like the number 1 guy out of the group.
Wow. So
I was like, cool. So if I just do good things happen, right? So I just carried that momentum into my military career, right? So I get to my first duty station, which is in Washington, D.C. at Bethesda, Maryland. It's the President's Hospital. And I started to do kind of like the same thing, show up on time, do what's expected, but do extra that other people aren't willing to do and volunteer. And, after about a year and a half, I kept that consistency up, and they actually put me up for Sailor of the Year at the President's Hospital in front of 6,000 other sailors, and I win.
Wow.
So it's a big deal because there's 6,000 sailors. They're only picking like one person to be able to be recognized amongst all these people as like, hey, this person has gone well above and beyond all expectations, and I win. And I get like a Navy and Marine Corps Achievement Medal. And then I end up leaving that duty station with like a, early evaluation. So I get to my next duty station. I go train with the Marines in North Carolina for 3 months, basically to prepare for like war and deployment. And I took a test and I got advanced to E5. And I'm only in the military like 2 years at this point, and I hit E5. It takes the average person like 9 years to hit the E5, and I did it in 2 years. And then from there,
is that because of how you tested, or just because, or was it, or for all the above and beyond, getting that picked up 1 out of 6,000? Like, was it a combination of all that? Or
yeah. So what I was doing in DC was I was conducting blood drives. We were traveling all over Washington DC, really the Northeast region, conducting blood drives, and we would collect blood units. And the President's Hospital Bethesda was like the number one. I think it's called a level 4 treatment facility, right? That's where the PTSD and traumatic, the brain trauma patients come to when they come back from war. And back then in 08, that's when it was like really hot, Afghanistan, Iraq, right? It was really popping off during that time frame. And we were like the number one supplier of blood to the Middle East. So I was leading all the blood drives, and I got so good at it. They made me like the leader of the blood drive. So I had like 5 or 6 military guys. I had 4 civilians. So it'd be like 10, 11 of us that'll go out, and we would go to work at 4 a.m. and we would get back at, 7 o'clock at night. And then we'd have to process the blood till about 9 p.m. at night. And then we'd have to go home and do the next thing, do it again the next day, be there at 4 a.m. So they would typically give us 4 days. We'd do 4 days like that, then 3 days on is how that would work. But just during that time, I did that. I was going to school. I was volunteering at a retirement home, working with Alzheimer's patients. So I was there for 2 years, and every time I went in, I had to introduce myself to the same people. Every weekend, I was, hey, I'm Douglas Doherty. My real last name's Doherty. I go by Douglas James. So James is my middle name. Doherty is my Irish last name that nobody knows how to spell or pronounce. So. Man, I just did stuff like that, and I led my team, and I passed my physical fitness test, above and beyond than what's expected to make you do physical fitness twice a year. And I was junior sailor of the year. So out of all the E4s and below, I got selected. But from there, I really went on to do some really cool things. I became a laboratory technician. So they sent me down to San Antonio for a couple of years. So I learned how to basically take any body fluid from you or anyone and basically run it and analyze it, read it, and give it to the doctor and tell the doctor what your diagnosis is, basically. So we're the guys behind the doctors that, give the diagnosis basically based off of the readings. And I went to end up going to San Diego. No, I went to Italy for 2 years. Then I went to San Diego, California, which is we're in Miami, so it's on the West Coast. But while I was in Italy, I became the leader of the physical fitness program for the whole duty station I was at. So I was in charge of like thousands of sailors, to pass their physical fitness exam twice a year. And physical fitness is a big part of being in the military, right? Because if there's bullets flying, you got to be able to run and duck and jump, right, and do all the things. So. And I'm only an E5 by then, right? So this job, by the way, is designed for someone that's like an E7 or an E8, like a high ranking active duty. And I'm this E5 kid. And
you're like what, 27 or something like
25,
that?
24.
25. Wow.
Yeah, I was a kid, but I was super fit. I was super motivated. My uniform always looked super sharp. I was there early. I left late. I volunteered for things that nobody wanted to do, because most people, when they have a job, they want to do their 9 to 5 and they want to go home. Nothing wrong with that, right? You're there to earn a paycheck. But if you're in a position like the military, if you do what's more than what's expected, you get rewarded, right? So I treated it just like a video game, right? So I got ranked quicker. I got opportunities. I threw the Navy and Marine Corps ball literally we had 8,000 people out in Italy that came to this huge ball, and I'm the one coordinating it. So I got the chefs, the vendors, the catering, the jazz musicians. There's like ceremonies, prisoner of war ceremony, and I conducted all of this. I learned how to do all of these things so that I could lead everyone. And these were just like some of the things that I did, but just to give you an idea. But I was just really into to advance in the military. If you're not shooting guns, just be really good at your job. Be willing to really spend a lot of time understanding the heritage and the culture of the military in the past and honoring that. So when they have these ceremonies and things, and also be really good at fitness and make sure you pass your exams. And those are like some ways that I basically gamified the system to make rank really fast. But here's the thing, I took a lot of people with me, right? I didn't just do this alone. So if I had to coordinate that ball, there was about 50 to 100 people roughly that I needed to coordinate. And there were a lot of junior sailors that I had to teach and put in places to make this ceremony and this ball happen, right? I had to make sure 1,000 people passed their physical fitness exam. We had the highest that year. And when I was there in 2012, we had the highest pass rating out of the entire Navy in physical fitness at a 98% rate, which is unheard. Yeah. And the only people that didn't fail was like, there was one surgeon, he's like one of 3 in the whole military that did what he did. So when he did the exam, the physical fitness, he just walked it. Yeah. He's like, I'm not doing push-ups because they're not going to fire him. He's one of 3, he's super rare. Right. Anyway, but,
well, yes, I have a couple questions about that. So again, you're still super young, and this is the first time in your life, at least it sounds like from what you were telling me, that you were really driven and motivated. So like, what was you talk about the video game analogy, but there had to be something driving you. Like, were you running away from something? Were you running to something? What was it that was driving you to that level?
You say running away from something. Yeah. I think I was just running away from not ever wanting to be in my childhood ever again.
It's a great motivator.
Yeah. I never wanted to be there, man. And I wanted to have a family. I wanted to have kids,
Well, talk about that. So, because it can go both ways. You could have a, messed up family situation growing up and be like, I don't want anything to do with that. Or you'd be like, no, I know what was broken and I want to do it right. Was that kind of how you looked at it, or what? Why did you decide that a family was important to you, having come from a family where maybe it didn't go so smooth?
Yeah. I've always wanted, a family. And I think when I got around, 24, 25, 26 years old, I got to San Diego. I met my, who's my wife now, Sonia. And this is a big part of the story, because up until this point, I was really just a kid in my actions outside of work, if that makes sense, And yes, I was driven to have success in the military because to me, it was a game, and I was really good at playing games. At work and outside of work, if you know what I'm saying. So anyway, when I first met my wife, I didn't know how real and how passionate love could actually be. And, and there was a closeness when I met her, and she's just like this light, and she's got this family. She's got three siblings, 2 brothers and a sister. They're Mexican. They have parents, right? And they actually came from, migrated from Mexico, and they're so close and they respect each other. And there's just so much love and respect for everything that they do. They take everything that they do is very meticulous and intentional, and they're always willing to like give the shirt off their back and do for other people and think of other people before themselves. And I never really, when I met Sonia, she had these qualities, and I never experienced anything like that because my whole childhood was chaotic, no love, right? Unless, obviously there was love. There was love from, obviously, in some ways from my dad, definitely from my mom, but she was very, what's that
It
called?
wasn't a safe environment, though, for
Enablement.
sure.
Yeah, she enabled my dad a lot, and my grandparents and all that. But I had never known that anything like that existed before. So when I met her, it was like, if I'm going to have kids with any woman, this is the type of woman it needs to be. These other girls, little girls I'm running around with, they're just here for, a good time, not a long time. So that really kind of set me like, more straight on the path of like, building an empire and finding someone, because we're all here, right? We're all here to, give. We're all here to procreate. That's what we're built for. That's why God made us, right? To procreate and create things and build empires. And that's what I saw myself doing in the military. I was having this thriving career. I went on deployment to the Philippines, Papua New Guinea, Fiji, built schools for kids, did a whole bunch of amazing things, made the rank of E6 in 5 years. It takes the average person 12 years to do. And I gamified my life a lot up until that point. But when I actually met Sonia, I realized I had to actually like surrender a lot of things, and let a part of me die before. And it made me, through the years of knowing Sonia, it's made me have to come to the table and find peace and understanding and forgiveness, because she's also, I didn't mention this, very faith-based. She's Catholic, right? And I kind of grew up Christian, there was in and out. My mom was Catholic. She's from Guatemala. But she just brought me into the church, and I got a new understanding of what all that means, so praying, reading the Bible, going to church. So this is actually a big part of my life today, so I give a lot of anything I have successful. I owe a lot to God, but, also my wife, Sonia, who's been a huge light in my life.
So, it's funny. I had a little bit of an insight that I hadn't thought about before, because I've interviewed a few people that are ex-military, and I guess I never thought about it before, but one of the things that makes someone successful in the military is alignment of incentives, right? It's like, hey, do this thing, you get this reward. Do this thing, you get this reward. Business is a lot like that too when you think about it, right? The better you can align incentives, whether it's with your salespeople and your sales commission structure, or your channel partnership relationships, or whatever it might be, that if you align the incentives properly, that's what's going to get you the best result in both in business, and I would argue maybe in life. But I hadn't really thought about that before. But so, all right, so you're very successful in the military, but then you make the decision to leave the military. What was the driving force behind that? Because you, like you said, you were on this rocket ship within the military. You'd be like, well, maybe I stay, for 25 years. How come you decided to get out?
Yeah. I mean, I was certainly on the path where like I was going to put in a package to become an officer, and like being an 03 officer was something on the table that I could have had done back in 2003, 2014. And, who knows, a captain, admiral, I was on that fast start path. Like in the military, they call them the fast starters and the slow starters, I guess. But I was on the fast path, very fast. I was moving over twice as fast as the average person. And it's kind of like, it's just like corporate, right? You do a good job, you kind of go up the ranks of the ladder. And, but it's also very political. I want to say this too. I did know some people in the right positions at the right times, and I got access to the right opportunities as well. I didn't mention, but I drew blood from, I was on the Me Too team when I was in Washington, D.C. This is something I got to do. It was pretty cool. But the Me Too team gets called in. You're on call 24 hours. So if, the president or high ranking politician needs to get their blood drawn or see the emergency room, you're the one that you're the medical team that reports to the hospital to attend that politician. So I actually got to draw President Barack Obama's blood back right after he made office in like 2009 timeframe. And that was pretty cool. But you don't just get access to that job. You have to be somebody that shows up, that is very credible, right? And I was able to demonstrate myself as someone to have that type of access to the president. But going back, why I left the military, I was on the fast start, but there came a point. The biggest thing that kind of changed my idea of staying is I was in the, I went on that deployment to Papua New Guinea and the Fiji and the Philippines, right? And I mentioned that earlier, I was building like schools for kids. And I did, at that point, I was only in for 5 years and I made E6, right? And E6 is like a high supervisory position. I could be in charge of hundreds of people. And I was that, and when I was in E5, I was in charge of like over 1,000 people. But I just really felt like when I got back, I'm like, this is the best work I've ever done. Like, I want to do more of this work. I want to build schools for kids. I want to, you know, have impact, but I want to do it on my own terms. And I want to make my own money and not just get back with my time, but get back with my money. Right. So I got back from deployment. I was like, what can I do? Am I going to stay in the military for 20, 30 years, or am I going to, you know, find my own thing? So I just was up late one night and I was looking up stuff on Google. I was like, looking up like, you know, how to get out the military, you know, how to get a job outside the military or make money outside the military or kill my job or fire my boss. You know, I started to like how to make money online. Like it just kind of led me all the way there, which I think a lot of people start their journey when they're trying to transition from their job to entrepreneur. And I landed on like digital marketing. You know, the first thing was SEO. I learned how to, I ended up buying this really cheap course, and actually it wasn't so cheap. It was like $8,000, and you know, it was a lot of money at the time. And I learned how to rank websites on Google, and I got really good at it. Started making like 30, 40 grand a month quite quickly. And then SEO, and then Google released this algorithm update, and basically how the person I was learning to rank these websites from were black hatting the system, gamifying it, I guess, right? And they released this update, the Penguin Killer, and basically I woke up the next day and like all my clients' websites disappeared from page one. Lost my business overnight. I was literally making like 40 grand a month, almost 50K, which was my annual salary in the military. I was making that in a month, and that disappeared overnight.
While you were still in the military?
While I was still in the military, by the way. So I was in the military doing all this for 4 years.
You'd be high rolling then, because, you know, you're making $500,000, you know, 340 grand a year. Oh my God. And you're in your 20s.
Yeah. And I end up buying like $150,000 Mercedes, and the CEO of the hospital is driving a Prius to work. I'm parking next to him. It's $150,000 Mercedes. I say that because word got around.
Yeah.
Like people started to see like, who the F is this dude driving this expensive car? He must be an admiral, but the car's here every day, you know? So they would see me get out. They would, you know, I would have my uniform on. Oh, he's an E5, you know, E6. How the hell is he affording the car? So that just kind of like spiraled to the point where like a lot of people started coming up to me and asking me, hey, what do you do? Like, do you have a side business outside of the military? So I had a Master Chief come up to me. So it's E9, highest ranking active duty you can go. Came up to me and he's like, hey man, I've been in the Navy for 25 years. I'm getting out next month. I don't want to sit in a classroom full of 19-year-olds and go, you know, he's going to have to go back to school to figure it out, because military, they like to say they prep you for the next thing, but it's not so good. I've gone through that system. It's kind of shit, if I'm being honest. There's a lot of work that needs to happen there. But anyway, he's like, can you teach me? I'm like, sure. So I went home, recorded probably the worst video course you've ever seen in your life, uploaded it to Dropbox, gave it to him, and he gave me $900 to do it, actually. So I was like, oh shoot, people are willing to pay you money for what you know. That's cool. Paid me $900. So I gave him the videos, and then 2 weeks later, he had a client paying him like $1,000 a month. So I'm like, okay, that works.
Good ROI for him.
Yeah. So he started to tell people, it's hard to have people come up to me. Yeah, here's the course. I started selling the course. And then they're like, hey, can you do calls with us? Yeah. So I started jumping on like group calls. And then so I was like minding my business, running my business at the time, you know, because I started with SEO, but then I got in because of that, because I lost it overnight, I had to pivot and find something else. So I found lead generation. So I learned how to run ads on like Facebook and Google. And for local businesses, brick and mortars, like your dentist, your chiropractor, car dealerships, all this stuff. And I started teaching them how to do that. And then that's when it just spiraled out of control. And then we scaled, to date, that coaching company to over 9 figures in revenue. And I've sold packages up to 50K, and I've had like penthouse events, and I've done all the crazy stuff that comes with, the guru space, even though I don't like to do that. But it's just been like, you know, I've just been, I guess I've always been a teacher, you know, so I look at it like this. Yes, I'm selling these programs, but people are getting results from it.
Sure.
There's knowledge, there's stuff that I know that they're willing to pay me for, and they're getting results from it. So I looked at it as like, when I was in the military, the reason why I advanced so quick is because I was focused on other people winning, right? I was helping other people get what they wanted, and what they wanted was to make more rank. And I knew how to make rank in the military. I gamified that. So I gave them the blueprint on how to make rank. And that's how, and then so I started to help other sailors increase their rank and make more money, because that's what happens when you make more rank, you make more money, right? So I took that same concept of just helping other people win, applied it to entrepreneurship.
Right.
And it was a quote that I read by Zig Ziglar. He says, you know, help other people get what they want. You can have all you want in life. When I read that, I was like, dude, that's been me this whole time.
Right.
That's the blueprint. That's why I knew the gamification of it. So I just applied it to business, and then boom, you know, I was able to have success.
Wow. What a fascinating journey, man. So now I can understand why you decided to get out of the military. You're like, I'm making all this money, you know, so now it makes a lot more sense. Well, so tell me about the journey. So it sounds like you're maybe 25, 26 or so when you met your now wife, right, Sonia? How old were you when you got married? How old were you when you started to have kids? And maybe what that journey was like, because, and I'll throw this caveat in there too, which is one of the things I find most interesting is the most common blind spot I see with successful men is their romantic relationships. It's like they'll seem like they have everything together, and that'll be their Achilles heel, is they'll pick the wrong partner, and that can train wreck almost anyone's life. So I'm just curious what that was like for you.
Yeah, got married in 2018. Met her when I first moved to San Diego in 2014. Got married 4 years later. Had 2 kids, one in 2019, the other 2 years ago. So 2 girls. Yeah, you know, she's been the best thing that's ever happened in my life. But honestly, there's times where I feel like I may not deserve her, because there's been times where I haven't treated her the best. You know, there's still things that, you know, no one is free from sin. No one's free from temptation, right? Well, every day life gives you 1,000 opportunities to destroy and lose everything every single day. You have to constantly make the right choice, the right decision every single day, right? You know, so there was a time, you know, maybe a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, me and my wife were, you know, having issues in our relationship. It hasn't been perfect this whole time. No marriage is, no relationship or business is ever, right? And there was a point where, you know, hey, are we divorcing? Like, you know, like that was an honest, like, topic of conversation that we were having with each other. And it was really, really hard, because at that time, we had 2 girls that were in this world that were depending on us, you know, and I have this thriving business, and I'm traveling, doing all these things, meeting all these people. And, you know, and, we actually lived apart for some time, and it was really, really tough. And I just, you know, I took that time to reflect on, like, you know, what's really important to me. You know, why did I get into business in the first place? Why did I join the military? When I met Sonia, why did I marry her? You know, what were the values that were important to me? So I had to, like, go back on a journey to reconnect and refine myself, because I told myself, I'm the guy that grew up in a chaotic environment, in a household where I saw XYZ happening, which no child should ever see. And I thought that was the example of what I should not be when I get older. Yet here I am entertaining some of those behaviors, right? So it really, really kicked me back. And, you know, I realized, shit, you know, Sonia's my woman. She's my wife. She's my queen. And we have 2 girls. And these girls are going to grow up either knowing their dad or not knowing their dad. And that's a very, very tough thing for me forever, because I'll tell you this quick story. When I was in the military and I first got to my first duty station at the President's Hospital, I ended up in the blood bank, but they had me rotate in a bunch of departments in the hospital. And one of the departments I spent 2 weeks in was the ward, where basically you go there. I think it was on the 9th or 10th floor, and you go there if basically you're terminally terminally ill and you're likely going to pass in the next 2 to 4 weeks.
Like hospice kind of thing?
Hospice, you're right there,
okay,
hospice.
right.
I said ward.
Yeah, no, but I get
hospice.
you, yeah.
And during my 2 weeks there, I saw a lot of patients come and go, unfortunately, and that's just what it is. So they prep you for that. They talk to you about it, and you're like, okay, you know, this is part of life. This is a hospital. That's what happens here. So during my 2 weeks, part of my duty was to, you know, check the log for visitors, you know, and make sure that every patient knew, hey, their mom or their sibling or their kids are going to come see them or whatever, right? And every patient that I had family coming and visiting them, but there was this one lady that every time I checked the log, no one signed up to come visit her.
Right.
And I would go care for her. I would do everything that you think that you can put your imagination to when you're taking care of a hospice patient.
Yeah.
Okay. And I had physical contact with her, obviously. And every time I went in there for the 2 weeks to check on her, she never looked at me. She never made a sound, never budged. I moved her forward, wiped her, did whatever. She used the bathroom, fed her, everything. You
Never even looked at you.
Never even looked at me. Never even looked at me. Not didn't say anything. She just looked down the whole time. Like she was maybe upset or angry or was holding some kind of, she was holding something, some kind of pain, and I could tell it and I could feel it on her. It was incredible. But, I think it was my last night, actually. It was my last night in hospice. And I get there, I do my more normal routine. And I'm like, yeah, you know, she doesn't have anyone again. So I go in there, check on her. I start to feed her, do the thing. And then I started to notice she's super cold. Like she's getting pretty cold as I'm holding her hand. And she just like looks up at me, eye contact for the first time in 2 weeks. And she gives me the biggest, most beautiful smile.
Wow.
And she speaks to me, and this is what she said. She says, I had a very troubled life. I have 2 daughters that don't want anything to do with me. And I made a lot of mistakes growing up. And she told me, always do the right thing. And she told me, I'm very grateful for you. You've brought me a lot of peace. Thank you. She said that. And then it's dead quiet. There's no one in the room.
Right.
No family, no nothing, man. And I could hear the heart monitor, like boop, boop. Every time it beeps, it's your heart pumping blood. And I'm just holding her hand. She smiles and she starts to close her eyes a little bit. And I could hear the monitor go beep, just like that. She closes. I feel life leave her body, and there was not a sound, not a crick. You can hear a cricket in the room. There was nothing in there, and I was just sitting there, and I was in shock. I was like, oh my God, this woman just passed in front of me, and I couldn't move. And it was probably one of the most incredible feelings I ever had, because a lot of things happened. This woman just passed, no one's in the room, and I'm in shock. The nurse comes in, she's like, what happened? I'm like, she just passed away. And I was just sitting there because a moment hit me, and I'm like, it's like I fast forward to maybe 60, 70 years later, and I'm like, oh my God, what if this is me sitting on this bed and no one's here?
Right.
That's like the scariest thing that I think, one of my big things I fear the most is dying alone. So when you ask me about my kids, about my family, about refining myself and going through my marriage, I think when I was going through that a couple of years ago, I brought back to that moment, and I'm like, man, my girls are going to grow up, and when I pass, I do not want them to come visit me. I don't want them to not come visit me if I'm passing.
Right.
I want them to know who their dad is. I want them to know how strong he was, how much he fought for them, and that he loved his mom, and that he did everything he could possibly do just to be a good human, live in integrity, and do the right thing. So I recalibrated myself. I collected myself, and I went to my wife, and I told her that I love her. And we worked it out, and now we're back together, and we're living in our faith. We go to church. I get to see my kids every day, and it's a beautiful thing.
Wow.
So
it's an amazing story.
Thank you. We all have this hourglass that's upside down, man, and there's sand going. You look at it one day and you think you got a lot of time, and then one day you can wake up and you're at the gates of heaven, and the crazy things happen in life, you know? So I think we hear the gurus and people on social media say to every time, you know, live like it's your last day. I don't think they're saying that just because it sounds cool. I think it's legit. You know, if there's something you want to do and build and see in your life, tomorrow is literally not guaranteed. And I've seen life leave my hands. I've had friends that I served with in the military that I hugged and said that I loved, and they shipped to Iraq, Afghanistan, 3 people, good friends, really amazing guys that didn't make it back, you know? So I've experienced loss, and
I think that people sometimes that it's, I think people don't sometimes appreciate, the only positive side of loss is that it does reinforce life, right? And I have a question for you about your daughters, because I just have one daughter. She's 24, soon to be 25. And one of the hardest things for me, I'll take one of those too, if you don't mind. So, you know, when my daughter was growing up, especially with a girl, I think it's even more true. But how much suffering do you allow them to have for them to experience? Because your knee jerk is for them to experience no suffering, but you're robbing them of growth. And so I'm just curious. I mean, your daughters are still very young, so hopefully not too much suffering. But have you thought about that and how to navigate that? Because I think it's one of the hardest things as a parent, especially as a dad to a daughter, is how much suffering do you allow your daughters to experience?
Yeah, I have a mentor. Thanks for the question. I have a mentor. His name's Dr. Jeff Spencer. He was an Olympian. He trained like 40 Olympians. He was with like Lance Armstrong through all 9 Tour de France's. Worked with Tiger Woods, Jim Quick. You probably know some of these names. Arnold Schwarzenegger. Anyway, the guy's a legend. He's like 83 years old, and he's the wisest real-time Yoda I've ever met in my life. And he has been studying human behavior basically since he was about 12 years old. And he's taught me so many things over the years. And one of the things he talks about, to answer your question, he says, life is not about going through life and not getting scars. It's about limiting the number of scars you can get, right? Because you're not going to be able to do everything with perfection and get the outcome that you're aiming for. You're going to fall short, right? And you're going to stumble, and you're going to hurt yourself. You're going to hurt other people, not out of intention. And he says that life is like walking through a minefield, right? And you're stepping, you don't know where the minefield is going to be, but you step on it. Hopefully you don't blow yourself up, but you might get some nicks. But if you get really good, you develop a sense of clairvoyancy to peek around the corner and know where the minefields are, right? So to speak. So, for my daughters, you know, I'm not an overprotective parent. I'm not a helicopter parent. My wife, on the other hand, she's certainly flying over them like anything that they do. And for a toddler, you know, for a little kid, you don't want them to go grab a glass and throw it on the floor and let them run across the glass. If you can avoid that, sure. But when you're talking about, hey, they're bringing home this boy, or they want to go to this party, or they want to fly to another state and go to college or visit another country. Those are scenarios I haven't come across yet because they're little. Right. But there's going to come a point where they're going to become their own women. Yeah. Young women, and they're going to want to start to make decisions for themselves. And my 5.5-year-old is kind of already doing it. Yeah. But she wants to run out the front door and see if mommy and daddy's vehicles are there. It's like, no, baby, don't run out there. Someone could snatch you up. So my style of parenting is I'm going to allow them to do the things that they want to do and advise them on the options, right? If you do this, here's the potential options, right? Approach it from an analytical standpoint, understand what the possible outcomes might be, and try to make the best decision possible, right? If you stay up till if you want to go to this party and stay up till 4 a.m., but you have to be at work or go to school at 8 a.m., you're going to be tired, right? But if you go to bed at 11 o'clock tonight and wake up on time, you're going to have a good day. So which is more important? Well, at the party, there's this, there's this guy that might be interviewing for these jobs, or to go to the school or college, and he's going to be there. And it may not be a drinking party. It may be just like a social event that might be worth the risk, right? So balance the risk out. So I'm going to be very allowing them to find their own, but I'm also going to be teaching them the values and things that I've gone through, because what am I going to do? I'm not going to teach my kids. I've gone through the same things. Right. I've hooked up with other people. Fortunately haven't done crazy drugs other than smoke weed. I've been offered a lot of crazy drugs, but I never did them. Right. I've gone to all the parties. So
except for the pre-workout drink, you didn't know had meth in it.
Oh my gosh. Jack 3D. If anyone's at home, you had Jack 3D in 08, 09, you know what I'm talking about. Like it had legit meth. Actually, that's probably what's in this drink too. That's why it's so good. Yeah, man. My girls will have a better understanding than I did when they're from now until when they leave the house of, what it means to be a good human and have values and ethics and do the right thing and live in with integrity. Because those are things I didn't have growing up, but I had to go through, my own struggles as a young man to find that journey. And I'm going to be sharing that with them, but they're going to make their own mistakes, man. Yeah. They're going to make their own mistakes.
Well, they need to, honestly. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, like that's the same. I always think I always joke, guys will be like, yeah, I'll be polishing my shotgun when the boy comes over to pick her up. I'm like, that's the wrong move, man. Yeah. It's like, to me, it's a way bigger problem if no one wants to sleep with my daughter than everyone wants to sleep with my daughter. Yeah. And if you teach her right and you help her understand how guys think and how the world works, and they'll make good choices. My experience is they're going to make some wrong choices, and, you need to never say, I told you so. Just be like, well, hey, let's talk about that. And maybe how do we avoid this next time, and so forth. So I'm curious, how were you so fortunate to find this mentor?
Yeah, I mean, so basically because of crypto, which I have a love-hate relationship with right now. Yeah. But I think it's going to
come back.
It's going to be a very loving relationship over the next 10, 20 years for sure. Yeah. But I met him because back in 2021, I had bought like some Bitcoin back in like 2017. Not a lot. It was, when it was kind of in mania and Bitcoin hit 17K, right? I think I bought it like 14K, and then it crashed to 3K, and I just held on to it. But now, I held on to it. Yeah. It's touched 110K. Yeah. As of a month ago, but now it's at like 80, which is fuck. But it's part of, it's okay to curse on your show.
Of course. Okay. Yeah.
All right. So sometimes it slips out. It's that sailor in me. So actually I'll tell that quick story real quick, cause that's fun. So in 2021, I started buying like meme coins, right? Someone made, poop coin and like, bad word coin, and all the and dog coins and all these things. So I started buying all these coins, and I started with $1,000. I put it into a crypto wallet, and I turned it into 10 grand overnight. Then I took that 10K, invested in other projects, turned into 100 grand in a few days, then turned 100K into like 800K in like a few weeks later. So I made all of this money in just maybe 2 or 3 short span in mid 2021. And it was incredible. And at that time, there was no formal crypto education, right? Coaching, Tony Robbins has been around forever. If you want to learn about personal development, and there's been thousands of Tony Robbins since then, right? A lot of people you can follow. I mean, shoot me, I even make videos about personal development. I'm sure you talk about that stuff as well. That's diffusion of innovation, by the way, which we can get into, which is interesting. But every time there's like a new technology or innovation, right, it goes through this adoption curve, and everyone adopts it and tells and perceives it a certain way and tells their own story, right? Which I think every original story came from like, if you read the Bible, regardless of your religious beliefs,
they're all in there somewhere.
They're all in there, and so it's been
nothing's original.
It's been diffused over thousands of years, which is interesting. But anyway, There's no formal education at the time. So I ended up joining like the only crypto mastermind that was around at the time in mid 2021. And there was this guy, Nick Peterson, and he would get on and he was applying like human behavior to crypto. Like don't buy things out of FOMO. He was, when the candle goes up, don't buy, consider selling, right? When the candle goes down, don't sell, consider buying. Like do the opposite, the fear and greed, right? So he was really giving like true information on investing, which is in the traditional investment world. And he was just bridging it to crypto because all these crypto kids and meme coiners had all this fear. They'd put their life savings into this coin and it dropped, and they turned 10 grand into 500K. 10 grand into like $500, losing their savings, and they're just losing their ass on all this stuff. And he was helping people to really work out the emotions. I'm like, man, this is really cool. I've never heard anybody talk about investing this way, to recognize the emotion side of things. So anyway, he rolled out an event, and I went to his first event. I think it was in Dallas, Texas, and he spoke. And this guy, when you hear him speak, it's like, who the F is this guy? Like, he's just one of those people he's somebody that should be on your show. I'll probably make that connection for you as well. But he's just I consider him like a legitimate Einstein of today. He can take super complex business problems or complex situations and make them so simple. You're like, oh my gosh, really? That's it?
That's the biggest form of genius to me, is being able to take something complicated and make it simple requires a different level of genius. I have so much admiration for people that are able to do that.
I went to his office and he's writing with both hands backwards on his whiteboard, writing full sentences backwards with both hands like this.
I didn't even know that was possible.
Real sentences. And I'm like, oh my God, dude, how do you do that? His brain just works a different way. Anyway, he had Dr. Jeff Spencer there. Dr. Jeff was his mentor. And actually, Nick has a really cool, crazy story. He was actually homeless most of his life. And then he found another mentor, Jeff Moore, who kind of connected him to the internet marketing world that I dabble in. I wouldn't say dabble in, that I'm in. But he found Dr. Jeff through that endeavor, coming from homeless. He's a really good story. I want to introduce you to him. But Dr. Jeff went on stage, and as soon as he opened his mouth, I'm like, oh my gosh, this guy is like, because he talks about how his whole thing is he's built for gold. He's built to be a champion. Like silver, bronze, he's not built for that. Like, he wants to be number one. And that's how he helped train 40 gold Olympians and Lance Armstrong and all these guys. So he talks about how there's two minds. You got the human mindset and you got the champion's mind. Human mindset is rigid, right? It's not moldable. It's not flexible. It's built for survival. The human's mindset could care less about your goals, dreams, aspirations, right? It just wants to eat, sleep, and breathe. That's it, right? You can actually survive with your brain and your spinal cord and your major organs. That's it. Legs and arms is just a luxury.
Yeah.
Like, to be honest, would life suck? Sure. And I know people that had their arms and legs blown off, and they had to go through a lot to live, right? But there's this other thing. It's the champion's mind, right? So, and if you want to achieve anything in life, in business, marriage, any kind of success at all, you have to develop that mindset because that's where you generate all your goals, dreams, aspirations. So, and he teaches you concepts on how to develop that. And I think a couple of the biggest things he's ever taught me was like, for example, when you're doing a task or a business, you have 1,000 things to do, on your list, right? Create your LLC, do marketing, run ads, make calls, right? Follow up with people, close deals, collect money, all the things that go in the business, hire people, right? Operations, accounting, legal. It's a lot of stuff, and it can be really overwhelming. That's why, like, most people don't make it in business, because they come from this lifestyle of hey, if I just work 40 hours a week, 9 to 5, I get a paycheck every 2 weeks. So when you cross over to business and entrepreneurship, it's literally you get what you put into it. And most people aren't able to make that transition. So, but with the champion's mind, instead of looking at like 1,000 things you got to do, just focus on the 1 or 2 things you got to do right now. What you got to do? You got to pick up the phone. You got 100 calls to make. What's the first thing you do? You got to pick up the phone.
Make the first phone call.
Make the first phone call. Don't worry about call 100. Right? Simple things like that sound like that's obvious, but people don't, they don't put their focus on that because they're looking for fast, quick gratification, right? We're all built for dopamine.
Right.
That's why Facebook and TikTok and Instagram and all these apps have blown up and they have billions and billions of users because they're constantly feeding your dopamine every 2 seconds.
Dopamine delivery systems is what they really are. So how did you convince him was it paid mentorship or how did you get him as your mentor?
My wife went up to him at that event and was like, Dr. Jeff, my husband has been looking for someone like you for a long time. He's at a place in his business life where he needs a father figure. And he's like, I need you to be his mentor.
Wow.
That's what my wife did. Yeah. Because she was with me at that event. So then Dr. Jeff came up to me. I didn't even talk to him yet. He came up to me.
Wow.
And was like, he told me, Douglas, we don't know each other yet, but I'm going to tell you something right now. I'm going to be your mentor. And I need you to commit to that right now. And he's like, your wife came to me, but I feel like it was a calling, like from God. And so I'm going to give you my number. We're really busy. We're at an event, but I need you to text me and we're going to talk this week. And I said, okay. So I took out my phone. He gave me his number. I shook his hand and, you know, it was an event. There was a lot of people there.
How many years ago was that?
It's about 4 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah. Wow. About 4 years ago.
Well, Douglas, honestly, like I could go for another 2 hours and I actually kind of want to. I'm going to have to make a trip out to San Diego anyway. Maybe we'll do this again because we only covered about half of the stuff I wanted to. But man, your story is so fascinating and inspiring. Where can people find you?
Yeah. Instagram, just go to Instagram, type in Douglas James. It should be the top one with the blue check. The handle is @_Douglas James. My website is leadfi.ai, which is my SaaS company. That's the one thing I'm focusing on today.
Right.
Which we didn't get into, but yeah, just hit me up. Happy to connect.
Yeah. Thank you much. Douglas, really appreciate your time.